The metal deck plates creaked under Captain James Walker's boots as he walked through the empty corridors of the U.S. Defiant. The sound echoed off the walls, reminding him of just how few crew members remained on board. A ship designed for a crew of 300 now ran with barely 50 people. The skeleton crew kept the basics running, but that was about it. Walker stopped at a viewport and looked at his ship's reflection in the reinforced glass. The Defiant's hull showed its age. 30 years of service had left their mark. Paint peeled off in patches, revealing the gray metal underneath. Some called it ugly. His own crew had nicknamed it Old Rust. But Walker saw something different when he looked at his ship. He saw a fighter that had survived dozens of battles and still stood ready for more. The captain's tablet buzzed. Another message from command, probably asking about the decommissioning schedule. They wanted the Defiant stripped and scrapped within the month. Walker ignored it and kept walking. He had more important things to do than read about how his ship was worthless. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez worked on an open panel, tools scattered around her feet. She didn't stop working when Walker entered, but she did shake her head. "They're really going to scrap her, aren't they, Captain?" "Not if I can help it," Walker said, picking up a wrench and handing it to her. "What's broken this time?" "Nothing's broken. I'm making improvements." Martinez wiped grease from her hands and grinned. "The brass thinks this ship is outdated. I'll show them outdated. Did you know our old reactor can push out 40% more power than the new models? The safety limits were set way too low back then." Walker raised an eyebrow. "Is that safe?" "Safer than those new reactors. They pack too much into too small a space. One hit in the wrong place and boom." Martinez patted the Defiant's reactor housing. "This old girl, she's built like a bunker. Sure, the power output is lower on paper, but she can take a beating and keep running." Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's comm system. "Captain to the bridge," the voice said. "Priority message from command." Walker sighed. "Keep up the good work, Chief. Don't let anyone tell you this ship is finished." The bridge felt too empty with just 3 people manning it. Walker remembered when every station had 2 crew members, with others standing ready as backups. Now most stations stayed dark. His tablet buzzed again as he sat in the captain's chair. This time, he opened the message. The orders were clear. Due to budget cuts, the Defiant's decommissioning had been moved up. They wanted the ship back in port by the end of the week. Walker's hands tightened on the tablet's edges. "Sir," his communications officer asked, "everything okay?" "They're pushing up the schedule," Walker said. "Want us back in port immediately." The young officer looked around the bridge, at all the worn but working stations. "But what about our patrol route? This sector will be unprotected. Command says they'll send a new ship to cover it." Walker stood up and walked to the main viewport. "Eventually. Could be weeks before they get around to it." He stared at the stars, thinking about the 3 colony worlds that depended on the Defiant's presence. Small colonies, sure. Nothing critical to the war effort. But there were families out there. Children. They slept better knowing the Union warship washed over them. Walker made his decision. He turned to his crew. "Send a message back to command. Tell them we're having engine trouble. Nothing serious, but we need to run at reduced speed. Should take us." He did some quick math. At least 2 weeks to reach port. His bridge crew tried to hide their smiles. They knew there was nothing wrong with the engines. Martinez had them running better than ever. But if command wanted to write off the Defiant as a broken-down relic, Walker would use that to his advantage. "Sir," his sensor operator called out. "Long-range scans picking up something strange. Might be sensor ghosts, but..." Walker walked to the sensor station. The officer pointed to several faint signals at the edge of their range. They flickered in and out, like ships trying to hide their presence. "How many contacts?" "Hard to tell with these old sensors, sir. Between 30 and 40, I think." Walker nodded slowly. The Defiant sensors were old, but they were also simple. Modern stealth systems were designed to fool more advanced scanners. Sometimes older technology had unexpected advantages. Keep monitoring them, Walker ordered. But don't adjust the sensors. Let them think we haven't spotted them yet. He returned to his chair and opened a comm channel to engineering. Chief Martinez, remember how you said this ship could give more than they thought? We might need to test that soon. About time, Martins replied. I've got some surprises ready. Just say when. Walker looked at the sensor display again. The mysterious ships were still there, still trying to hide. He thought about the colonies, about how many lives depended on the Defiant doing its job. Command might have written off this ship, but Walker knew better. The Defiant had 30 years of battle experience built into its bones. Every scar, every patch, every repair told a story of survival. Send another message to Command, he told his communications officer. Tell them our engines are going to need even more work than we thought. We'll have to extend our patrol while we fix them. As his crew relayed the message, Walker smiled. Let everyone think the Defiant was broken down and helpless. Let them underestimate this old warship. Sometimes the strongest weapons were the ones your enemy never saw coming. In engineering, Martinez and her team worked through the night, pushing the ship systems well beyond their official limits. They knew what was coming. The whole crew did. They'd all chosen to stay when others transferred off, seeing the same thing Walker saw in the Defiant. Not a relic, but a warrior that refused to quit. The mysterious ships moved closer, still thinking themselves undetected. But the Defiant's crew saw them. The old ship systems might not be modern, but they worked just fine. Walker ordered the crew to battle stations quietly, not wanting to alert their watchers. Ready to show them what a broken-down old ship can do. He asked his bridge crew. They responded with determined nods. The Defiant might have been written off by Command, but her crew knew better. Sometimes the best ships weren't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes they were the ones that had earned their strength through years of service, through battle scars and hard-won experience. The unknown ships crept closer, and Walker let them come. The Defiant waited, playing the part of the helpless old warship while her crew prepared for what would become one of the greatest battles in Union history. They had no way of knowing it yet, but the ship that everyone had written off was about to remind the galaxy why humanity's older warships were still worth fearing. In his captain's chair, Walker watched the sensor readings and smiled. Let them come. The Defiant might be old, but she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. And soon, very soon, she would prove it to everyone. The first real warning came 3 hours before dawn. Ship time. The Defiant's sensors picked up energy spikes from the approaching ships. They were powering up their weapons. Walker stood at his command station, watching the tactical display as more details became clear. The mysterious ships had stopped trying to hide. 35 ships, the sensor officer reported, his voice steady despite the news. Dominion warships, Captain. Looks like they didn't expect anyone to spot them so soon. Walker nodded. The Dominion, humanity's newest enemies, had a reputation for attacking what they thought were easy targets. They probably saw the Defiant as exactly that. An old, broken-down ship they could destroy without much effort. Send a message to Command, Walker ordered. But run it through our old encryption systems, not the new ones. He knew the Dominion had broken several of the Union's modern codes. Sometimes older was better. The response from Command came quickly. All ships were to retreat immediately. The Dominion fleet was too powerful. But Walker looked at his tactical display, at the 3 colony worlds that would be defenseless if the Defiant left. 30,000 civilians lived on those worlds. Farmers, miners, families with children. The Dominion wouldn't show them any mercy. Chief Martinez, Walker called over the ship's comm. How are those engine modifications coming along? Better than anyone would expect, Captain, Martins answered. Her voice carried the excitement of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. I've got the reactor running at 110% capacity. Weapons are hot. Shield generators are putting out more power than they did when this ship was new. Walker smiled. While everyone else saw an outdated warship, Martinez had seen potential. She'd spent months improving every system, finding ways to push them far beyond their original limits. The Defiant might be old, but she was far from helpless. All hands, battle stations, Walker ordered. The few crew members they had moved quickly to their posts. They'd drilled for this, prepared for this. They knew what was coming. The Dominion fleet spread out in a classic attack formation. Their ships were beautiful things, all smooth lines and gleaming metal. Next to them, the Defiant looked like exactly what everyone thought it was, an aging warship that should have been scrapped years ago. "They're broadcasting, sir," the communications officer reported. "They're ordering us to surrender or be destroyed." "Send them static," Walker said. "Let them think our communications are failing. Every seeming weakness could become an advantage if used properly." The first Dominion shots came as a test, energy beams reaching out across space. They hit the Defiant's shields that should have collapsed under such modern weapons. But Martinez had modified the old shield generators, and the Defiant shrugged off the attack. Shields holding at 95%, Martinez reported from engineering. "Their fancy new weapons aren't calibrated for our old-style shields. They're expecting modern defenses." Walker watched as the Dominion fleet moved closer, probably confused by the Defiant's survival. That's when he saw their mistake. They were spreading out too much, trying to surround one seemingly harmless old ship. Pride would be their downfall. "Helm, set course 030, Walker ordered. "Make it look like we're trying to run. Let's see how many of them take the bait." The Defiant turned slowly, like a wounded animal trying to escape. Several Dominion ships broke formation to chase them, exactly as Walker had hoped. He waited until they were committed to the pursuit before springing his trap. "All weapons, fire." The Defiant's old weapons might not have been as sophisticated as modern ones, but they had other advantages. They were simple, reliable, and thanks to Martinez's modifications, incredibly powerful. The first volley caught 3 Dominion ships completely by surprise. Their modern shields, designed to stop modern weapons, struggled against the Defiant's upgraded but old-style weapons. 2 enemy ships exploded immediately. The third spun out of control, its shields overwhelmed. The remaining Dominion ships scrambled to regroup, but the damage was done. Their perfect formation was broken. "They're trying to jam our targeting systems," the weapons officer reported with a grin. "But our old targeting computers don't use the frequencies they're jamming. We've got clear shots while they're flying blind." That was another advantage of being underestimated. The Dominion's electronic warfare was useless against the Defiant's outdated systems. While their ships struggled to target the old cruiser, Walker's crew had perfect firing solutions. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recent naval history. The Defiant moved like a dancer among the stars, its experienced crew using every trick learned over 30 years of service. When the Dominion ships tried to trap them with modern tactics, Walker countered with maneuvers so old they'd been forgotten by most captains. Port shields failing. Martinez called out after a particularly heavy hit. "Rerouting power now." "Helm, roll starboard," Walker ordered. "Show them our stronger shields while the port side recovers." The Defiant spun gracefully, turning its weakness away from the enemy. The move would have been dangerous in a modern ship, but the Defiant's sturdy frame could handle it. The Dominion fleet's formation had completely collapsed now. Instead of working together, their ships fought as individuals, each trying to be the one to kill the troublesome human vessel. Their pride made them predictable. "Target the lead ship," Walker commanded. "Full power to forward weapons." The Defiant's main guns spoke again, their energy beams cutting through space. The Dominion flagship's shields flickered and died. A second volley tore through its hull, turning the beautiful ship into expanding debris. "Enemy fleet is pulling back," the sensor officer reported. "They're trying to regroup." Walker watched as the Dominion ships retreated, clearly shocked by the loss of their flagship. They had expected an easy victory over a single outdated cruiser. Instead, they'd found themselves facing a warrior that refused to die. "Don't let them regroup," Walker ordered. "Push the attack. Show them what this old ship can really do." The Defiant surged forward, its engines burning far brighter than they should have been able to. Martinez had worked miracles with the old power systems, giving the ship speed and power that no one would have thought possible. The Dominion fleet scattered. Their coordination was gone, replaced by panic. Some ships tried to stand and fight, while others turned to run. The Defiant hunted them all, its weapons finding targets with deadly accuracy. In his command chair, Walker felt a fierce pride. His ship, the one everyone had written off as worthless, was proving itself against impossible odds. The crew worked their stations with perfect efficiency, every person exactly where they needed to be. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're picking up transmissions from the colonies. They can see the battle from the ground. They're cheering for us." Walker smiled. This was why they'd stayed. This was why they'd refused to give up on this old ship. Because sometimes the only thing standing between innocent people and disaster was a crew willing to fight impossible odds. The battle wasn't over, far from it. But the Defiant had proven something important. Age didn't matter as much as experience. Modern technology wasn't always better than tested, reliable systems. And most importantly, you should never, ever underestimate a ship and crew that had nothing left to lose. As the Dominion fleet continued to fall apart under the Defiant's assault, Walker made a silent promise. They would remember this day. They would remember the lesson of underestimating their opponents. And they would remember the name of the ship that everyone else had written off as worthless. Fire bloomed across the Defiant's bow as another Dominion ship exploded. Through the bridge viewport, Walker watched the pieces scatter across space like falling stars. His ship shuddered as enemy weapons found their mark, but the old armor held strong. 7 enemy ships destroyed, but many more remained. "Hull breach on deck 4. Martinez's voice crackled over the comm. "Emergency teams responding." "Captain, I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." Walker gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "I'm open to suggestions, Chief. Remember how I said the reactor could run at 110%? Well, I can push it to 140. It might melt down, but before it does..." Martinez paused as something exploded in engineering. "Before it does, we'll have enough power to punch through anything." The tactical display showed 28 Dominion ships still in fighting condition. They'd learned from their early mistakes and were now coordinating their attacks better. The Defiant's advantages of surprise and confusion were wearing thin. "Do it," Walker ordered, "but evacuate all non-essential personnel from engineering first." Warning lights flashed across every console as Martinez pushed the reactor beyond its limits. The deck plates vibrated under their feet as power surged through the ship's systems. Temperature warnings blared from multiple sections. "New contact," the sensor officer shouted. "Big one, coming in fast from Sector 7. Walker turned to the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The Dominion dreadnought had arrived, its massive form dwarfing even the other enemy ships. It was the kind of warship that could destroy entire fleets by itself. "All hands, brace for impact." Walker barely got the words out before the dreadnought's main guns fired. The blast caught the Defiant along its port side, sending the ship spinning through space. "Port armor down to 20%, Martinez reported. "That thing's got some serious firepower, Captain, but I've got a surprise for them too." The Defiant's spin hadn't been an accident. As the ship turned, Walker saw what Martinez had done. She'd overloaded the port armor plates just before impact, making them absorb far more damage than they should have been able to. The dreadnought had wasted its best shot. "Helm, bring us in close," Walker ordered. "They won't expect that. Those big ships always want to fight at range." The Defiant's engines roared as the old ship charged straight at the massive dreadnought. The enemy vessel's secondary weapons opened up, filling space with energy beams and missiles. But the Defiant's point defense systems, modified by Martinez's team, swatted the missiles from space while the old shields absorbed the energy weapons. Their targeting systems are having trouble with our speed, the tactical officer reported. They're used to targeting bigger ships at long range. We're too close and too small for their main weapons now. Walker smiled. Another advantage of being underestimated. The Dreadnought's crew had never trained to fight small ships at close range. They'd probably thought no captain would be crazy enough to try it. All weapons, target their sensor arrays, Walker commanded. Let's blind this beast. The Defiant's guns spoke again, pouring fire into the Dreadnought's sensitive sensor systems. Modern warships depended heavily on advanced sensors. Without them, they were like giants swinging blindly in the dark. Martinez's voice came over the comm again, strained but excited. Reactors holding at 135%, Captain. We've got more power than this ship's had since it was built. Want to see what these old guns can really do? Show me, Chief. The Defiant's main weapons had been modified far beyond their original specifications. When they fired this time, the energy beams were bright enough to leave afterimages in everyone's vision. They struck the Dreadnought's shields head-on, and for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive ship shields collapsed completely. The Defiant's second volley cut deep into its hull, targeting critical systems that Martinez had identified. The Dreadnought, pride of the Dominion fleet, began to list to one side. The other enemy ships are moving to protect the Dreadnought, Tactical reported. They're forming a defensive screen. Walker watched as the remaining Dominion ships clustered around their wounded flagship. It was the moment he'd been waiting for. When fighting a superior force, the goal wasn't to destroy every ship. It was to make them react exactly how you wanted them to. Helm, attack pattern Delta, Walker ordered. Engineering, give us everything you've got. Weapons, target the ships directly in front of us. Don't stop firing until we're through their line. The Defiant's engines burned white-hot as the ship accelerated to maximum speed. The enemy formation looked strong, but Walker had seen something his opponents hadn't. In their rush to protect the Dreadnought, they'd left a weak point in their defense. Multiple impacts. Someone shouted as enemy fire raked the Defiant's hull. Warning sirens blared throughout the ship, but Walker kept his eyes on the tactical display, watching as they drew closer to their target. Now, he ordered. The Defiant's guns fired everything they had. At the same time, Martinez diverted every scrap of power to the forward shields. The old ship hit the enemy formation like a bullet through paper. 2 Dominion ships exploded as the Defiant's weapons found their marks. A third spun away, its entire side torn open. And then they were through, with the enemy fleet split in 2 behind them. The Dreadnought lay exposed, its defenses stripped away. Engineering to bridge, Martinez called. Whatever you're going to do it fast. The reactor can't take much more of this. Walker looked at his tactical display one last time. The remaining Dominion ships were trying to turn around to close the gap the Defiant had torn in their formation. But they were too slow, too clumsy in their panic. All weapons, fire on the Dreadnought's engines, he ordered. Don't let them get away. The Defiant's gun spoke one final time. Energy beams sliced through the Dreadnought's wounded hull, finding its massive engine cores. For a moment, the huge ship seemed to shudder. Then its engines exploded, the chain reaction tearing the mighty vessel apart from within. The blast wave hit the Defiant like a hammer, pushing the old ship through space. But decades-old armor and structural supports held together, proving once again that they didn't build ships like this anymore. Dominion fleet is in full retreat, Tactical reported, wonder in his voice. They're running, Captain. They're actually running. Walker watched as the surviving enemy ships fled in different directions, all coordination lost. The Dreadnought's destruction had broken their will to fight. No one had expected a single outdated cruiser to achieve something like this. In engineering, Martinez worked frantically to bring the reactor back under control. The Defiant had pushed far beyond its limits, but somehow the old ship had held together. Just like its crew, it had refused to give up when everyone else had written it off. "Stand down from battle stations," Walker ordered. "Begin damage control procedures." He looked out at the debris field that had once been a proud enemy fleet. "And someone get me a secure channel to command. I think we need to update them on our status." The bridge crew laughed, tension finally breaking. They had done the impossible. A single aging cruiser had stood against an entire fleet and emerged victorious. The colonies were safe, and the Dominion had learned a harsh lesson about underestimating their opponents. As damage reports came in and repair crews got to work, Walker felt a deep pride in his ship and crew. The Defiant might have been old, but today it had proven that age and experience could triumph over modern technology. Sometimes the strongest warriors were the ones that everyone else had forgotten about. Smoke filled the Defiant's corridors as damage control teams worked to contain the aftermath of battle. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the ship's hull groaned with every movement. But they were alive. They had won. Walker walked through his wounded ship, checking on his crew and seeing the damage firsthand. Every few steps, someone would stop to salute or shake his hand. Their eyes showed pride mixed with disbelief. They had just destroyed a Dominion dreadnought and scattered an entire enemy fleet. The captain stopped at a viewport, looking out at the field of debris that surrounded them. Pieces of Dominion ships drifted past, their once beautiful hulls now twisted and broken. The sight reminded him of how close they had come to sharing that fate. "Captain to engineering," he called over the ship's comm. The system crackled with static but still worked. Like everything else on the Defiant, it refused to give up. "Engineering here," Martines answered, her voice tired but satisfied. "If you're coming down, watch your step. We've got coolant leaks everywhere, and the reactor's still running hotter than I'd like." Walker made his way down to engineering, passing more repair crews along the way. Every deck showed battle damage, but nothing the old ship couldn't survive. The Defiant had been built to take punishment and keep fighting. Engineering looked like a war zone. Steam hissed from broken pipes, and warning lights flashed on almost every console. Martine stood in the middle of it all, covered in grease and coolant, directing her teams like a conductor leading an orchestra. "How bad is it?" Walker asked, stepping carefully over a fallen support beam. Martinez wiped sweat from her face, leaving a streak of black grease across her forehead. "Bad enough. Good news is, the reactor didn't explode. Bad news is, we burnt out half our power systems pushing it that hard. We're running on backup generators for most systems." She led Walker to the main engineering display, pointing out the damage reports. "Port armor's almost gone. Starboard's not much better. Main guns are offline. We basically melted their power connectors. Life support's working, but environmental controls are shot. That's why it's so hot in here. Can we fix it?" "Already started. This old girl's tough. Everything that broke can be repaired." Martines patted a nearby console affectionately. "Might not be pretty, but we can get her running again. Just need time and materials." The ship's comm system crackled to life. "Bridge to captain. We're receiving multiple transmissions from the colonies. They want to thank us personally. And, sir, you need to see these sensor readings." Walker hurried back to the bridge, leaving Martinez to her repairs. When he arrived, his sensor officer was staring at the display with wide eyes. "What are we looking at?" Walker asked. "The colonies, sir. The Dominion ships we drove off. They were carrying ground troops, enough to occupy all 3 worlds. If we hadn't stopped them." The officer didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what the Dominion did to occupy colonies. The communications officer spoke up next. "Sir, the colonial governors are calling us heroes. They're spreading the word about what happened here. The Defiant's already becoming a legend on the frontier worlds." Walker sat in his command chair, feeling every one of the ship's 30 years in his bones. They had saved 3 worlds today. 30,000 lives protected by a ship that Command had wanted to scrap. "Signal from Command coming in," the communications officer reported. They're sending reinforcements. 3 battle groups should be here in about 6 hours. About time, someone muttered, drawing tired laughs from the bridge crew. The next few hours passed in a blur of damage control and repair work. The Defiant's crew worked tirelessly, patching systems and fixing what they could. They had to be ready in case any Dominion ships came back for revenge. A cheer went up from the sensor station when the first Union ships appeared. Modern battlecruisers and destroyers dropped out of faster-than-light travel, weapons ready. But they found only debris and a battered old cruiser that had somehow achieved the impossible. The commander of the relief force, Admiral Thompson, transported over to the Defiant as soon as he arrived. Walker met him in what was left of the main hangar bay. The Admiral looked around at the battle damage with disbelief. "The report said you destroyed a dreadnought," Thompson said. "I didn't believe it until I saw the wreckage." "How did you do it?" "This ship was supposed to be decommissioned." Walker smiled. "Sometimes the best ships are the ones everyone else has forgotten about, sir. The Dominion didn't expect us to fight. They definitely didn't expect us to win. Their overconfidence was their weakness." Thompson nodded slowly, still looking at the damage around them. "Your chief engineer sent us the reactor readings. By all rights, this ship should have torn itself apart. The power levels you were running, I've never seen anything like it." "The Defiant was built to last," Walker said simply. "They don't make them like this anymore." "No," Thompson agreed. "They certainly don't." He turned to face Walker directly. "I've already sent my report to Fleet Command. The decommissioning order has been canceled. In fact, they want to study what your engineer did with the reactor and weapon systems. This could change how we approach ship design." Walker felt pride swell in his chest. His ship hadn't just won a battle. It had proved that older designs still had value. That experience and determination could overcome superior technology. "There's more," Thompson continued. "The Dominion fleet you scattered. They ran straight into 2 of our patrol groups. Between the damage you did and our patrols, they lost over 80% of their ships. This is the biggest defeat they've suffered since the war began." Word spread quickly through the ship. The crew's pride grew even stronger when they learned the full impact of what they'd achieved. They hadn't just saved 3 colonies. They'd helped strike a major blow against humanity's enemies. In engineering, Martinez received the news while elbow-deep in reactor repairs. She smiled as she worked, already planning improvements to make the old ship even stronger. The Defiant had proven itself in battle, but she knew it could do even more. Walker stood on the bridge, watching as repair ships arrived to help fix the battle damage. The Defiant would need weeks of work to be fully operational again, but it would sail again, stronger than ever. Its days of being forgotten and overlooked were over. "Message from the colonies, sir," the communications officer reported. "They're asking permission to name their new orbital defense stations after the Defiant." Walker nodded, thinking about how much had changed in just one day. His old ship had arrived in this system as a relic, scheduled for destruction. Now it was a symbol of hope and resistance, proof that you should never judge something's worth by its age alone. The Defiant had been written off by everyone except its own crew. But that crew's faith had been rewarded. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, turning their ship's supposed weaknesses into strengths. The legend of the old cruiser that destroyed an Armada was already spreading through Union space, giving hope to other frontier worlds. And somewhere out there, the surviving Dominion ships carried a warning to their fleet. Beware the old ships. Sometimes they bite the hardest. 3 months after the battle, the Defiant floated in space dock, its hull gleaming with fresh paint. The scars of battle had been repaired, but the ship looked different now. Special markings along its side showed its battle honors, and the name Defiant stood out in bold letters that seemed to dare anyone to underestimate the old cruiser again. Walker stood in the observation room, watching as work crews made final adjustments to his ship. The Defiant had been in dock for 12 weeks, receiving not just repairs but improvements. Every system had been checked, tested, and upgraded based on what they'd learned during the battle. Quite a change from when they wanted to scrap her, Martine said, walking up beside him. The chief engineer looked different too. Her uniform now carried the rank of commander, a promotion earned by her incredible work during the battle. "How are the improvements coming along?" Walker asked, noting the excitement in his chief engineer's eyes. "Better than anyone expected. The Union's best engineers have been studying what we did with the reactor and weapons. They said it shouldn't have been possible." Martins grinned. "I showed them exactly how possible it was. Now they're refitting a dozen other older ships with similar modifications." That was perhaps the Defiant's greatest victory. Its success had forced the Union military to reconsider its attitude toward older vessels. Ships that had been scheduled for decommissioning were being evaluated for upgrade programs instead. Experience was being valued alongside technology. The ship's comm system chimed. "Captain, Admiral Thompson requests your presence in the main briefing room. Says it's about our new assignment." Walker and Martinez made their way through the station's corridors. Everywhere they went, people stopped to stare and whisper. The crew of the Defiant had become celebrities after their victory. Everyone wanted to hear the story of how one old ship had destroyed a Dominion dreadnought and scattered an enemy fleet. Admiral Thompson waited for them with a group of senior officers. The briefing room's main screen showed a map of Union space, with particular focus on the frontier regions. "Captain, Commander," Thompson greeted them. "I trust the refit is proceeding well." "Yes, sir," Martins answered. "The Defiant will be ready for space trials by the end of the week. We've increased power output by another 20%, and the new targeting systems are fully integrated with our older weapons." Thompson nodded approvingly. "Good, because we have a special mission for you." He gestured to the map. "The Dominion has changed their tactics since your battle. They're avoiding confrontation with older Union ships, focusing only on targets they're certain they can overwhelm. This has actually given us an advantage." The Admiral touched a control, and several points on the map lit up. "These are sectors we believe the Dominion will target next. Each one is defended by ships they would consider outdated. Ships like the Defiant." Walker understood immediately. "They're traps." "Exactly. The Dominion's overconfidence was their weakness before. Now we're going to use that weakness against them." Thompson smiled. "And the Defiant will lead the operation." The briefing continued as Thompson laid out the details. The Defiant would command a squadron of similarly aged ships, all upgraded with Martinez's innovations. They would patrol the frontier, appearing vulnerable while actually being more than capable of handling any Dominion force they encountered. When the briefing ended, Walker and Martinez walked back through the station. They stopped at a viewport that offered a clear view of their ship. The Defiant's running lights were on, making it look alive and ready for action. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Martins asked. 3 months ago, they wanted to turn her into scrap. Now she's leading a whole squadron." Walker shook his head. "I knew this ship had more to give. I just didn't know how much more." He looked at the special markings on the hull, each one representing a Dominion ship destroyed in the battle. The Dreadnought's mark was largest of all. A group of new crew members passed by, heading toward the Defiant's docking port. The ship's complement had been increased to full strength, with many experienced officers requesting transfer to serve aboard the famous vessel. Everyone wanted to be part of the legend. The ship's comm system activated again. "Engineering teams report all systems are ready for final testing, sir. Permission to begin power-up sequence." Walker shared a look with Martinez. They both knew what this meant. After 3 months of repairs and improvements, the Defiant was ready to fly again. Ready to show the Dominion that their first encounter hadn't been a fluke. "Permission granted," Walker said. "Begin power-up sequence." Through the viewport, they watched as the Defiant's systems came to life. The old ship hummed with power, its upgraded reactor providing more energy than any vessel its size should have been able to generate. Running lights brightened, and weapon ports cycled through their testing sequences. "Message from Fleet Command," the communications officer reported. "The rest of our squadron is assembling. 4 ships, all veterans like the Defiant. They're waiting for us to take command. Walker felt pride swell in his chest. His ship, once considered obsolete, was now leading others into battle. The Defiant had become more than just a single victory. It had become a symbol of everything the Union stood for: determination, innovation, and the refusal to give up even against impossible odds. The final preparations took less than a day. The Defiant's crew worked with practiced efficiency, storing supplies and running final system checks. Everyone knew their jobs, and everyone understood the importance of their mission. As Walker sat in his command chair for the first time since the battle, he looked around the bridge. New displays had been added, but the old reliable systems remained. The perfect blend of experience and innovation, just like the ship itself. All stations report ready, his first officer announced. Squadron is standing by for our signal. Walker nodded, feeling the familiar vibration of the Defiant's engines through the deck plates. Send word to the squadron. Tell them to form up on our position once we clear the dock. The massive space dock doors opened slowly, revealing the star-filled space beyond. The Defiant moved forward under its own power for the first time in 3 months, its engines burning bright and strong. One by one, their squadron fell into formation around them. Each ship was a veteran of countless battles, each one considered outdated by modern standards. But together, under the Defiant's command, they formed one of the most experienced combat units in the Union fleet. Squadron reports ready, communications announced. All ships at your command, sir. Walker looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed. The ship that everyone had written off had proven its worth in the hottest fire of battle. Now it would lead others to do the same, protecting the frontier and teaching the Dominion to fear the old ships they had once dismissed. Set course for the frontier, Walker ordered. Let's show them what experience can do. The Defiant led its squadron into faster-than-light travel, heading for the border worlds that needed their protection. They were the ships that everyone else had forgotten about, the ones that had been written off as obsolete. But they had survived while newer, more advanced vessels had fallen. Sometimes the strongest warriors were the ones with the most scars, the ones who had earned their strength through years of service and sacrifice. The Defiant had proven that. Now it would prove it again, leading a squadron of forgotten warriors to protect the worlds that needed them most. The legend of the old cruiser that destroyed an Armada had only begun. The best chapters were still to come.